All right, we are recording. We are live. Live. Um, Today we have a friend of mine, an amazing creative and co-founder of an agency called Confidant. Thank you so much for being here, Ken Byers. And we are having another conversation for my series called The Treatment Forum. And we actually worked together with two different campaigns for Amazon Fresh, and just fell in love with working with you guys as a team. You guys are just so clever and bring so much humor into a lot of the work. And it was just so like fun to be on set with you guys. Yeah, definitely really enjoyed that. And yeah, I'm really glad to have you.
Yeah, likewise. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and was that a proper intro? You are co-founder principal of Confidant.
Yeah, I never know what to call myself, but yeah, co-founder. We're an agency with an office in Nashville, which is where I am, and another office in New York.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, calling myself the principal is like a way of dodging, like, I'm involved in creative, I'm involved in production, I'm involved in business development, and I just never know what to call myself. So there you go.
Right. Right. I mean, and that's why I'm so excited to talk to you and for this episode, because you are a true like strategist and creative, and you're really looking at things in both ways. And that's kind of how I've been reshaping how I think about pitching and how I think about the treatment process, because, you know, at the very least, you have to be a good, director or photographer or illustrator. Like you have to be good at your craft. But then on top of that, you're even really a problem solver, kind of trying to help you bring something to life for a certain amount of budget and in a certain amount of time. And I think it's kind of pushing like that balance of like the business mind and the artist kind of creative mind. And I feel like you probably are juggling both all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so I guess in terms of high level, let's talk about how much like day to day when you are, seeing when you're working on projects. And well, first, let's talk about how long are you kind of like in the process of concepting for a campaign, then to the point where you actually are starting to seek out like partners to make it happen.
Depends on how well the process is going, how long it takes. But so I will say I'm envious of directors and people closer to production because you can kind of strike quicker. On the agency side, we're
Mm,
sort of there like it's just a long time from beginning to end. So I'll
mm,
I'll give two examples. I think I'll first use the example that we worked on together. The second time we worked on Amazon Fresh, which was a sizable project with a lot of video that was going to come from it, as well as photography. So it was a shoot with a lot cooking. Um, that one we would have come in and we would have done some rounds of concepting. We usually go pretty big on our first round of concepting. Sometimes I feel like we show too much. We kind of like to come on round one with, I mean, it can be 7+ concepts that are sort of like weighs in with a little bit of proof of concept, not full storyboards, but like enough that you feel what it could be. Um, so usually we have like a couple weeks of that and then a couple more rounds. So it might be like 6 weeks of, onboarding, concepting, first round being a lot of different concepts, and then hopefully they pick one, but usually they pick two or three. and
okay.
it gets about like getting some scripting and maybe storyboards to just get a little bit more of a feeling about what it's going to look like. Um, and then usually the starting to talk with you, getting you briefed, treatment, reviewing treatment, getting budgets together. I mean, that can be another month easily. And then post production obviously can be another couple months after that. So Yeah, for us, it ends up being, you know, at the fastest, a 4 month arc to the whole thing. And if it's something that has a lot more layers within the client's organization, it can go, it can be 8 months. I mean, some projects, some clients, like we work on Sony too, where they just have like a lot of different layers, and it's those end up being 8 month, 9 month, beginning to end,
Yeah.
with a lot of twists and turns. So,
Yeah, I forget how yeah, when you really think about it from, pitching like conception and pitching multiple approaches to post, yeah, it's practically a year. And so, you think about like how many clients of those you can really juggle when they're such like long-term projects. And maybe it's good because, you can space it out, like you let things breathe, you don't make like rash decisions. But I imagine, yeah, there's constant changes and adjustments. And when you were talking about like the 7 things that you are strategizing, you already have this client and you're still kind of presenting that many, or is this in the instance where you're pitching the client and then you're awarded and then they choose like one of those concepts or something? Is
both.
Oh, okay.
I mean, in the case of the Amazon Fresh example that we worked on with you, we had already been working with them for a couple years. But it still has a funny way of feeling like we're pitching for the project, even when they're like someone on the
Yeah.
other end of the phone with us.
Yeah, interesting.
Because you're just always, you're either hitting it or you're not hitting it. So you
Hmm.
have to bring the options, and you have to demonstrate, like for us, we're demonstrating that we understand the dynamics at play, and we're trying to give options, and
Hmm.
we're trying to sort of at one extreme have the sort of like options that push things a little bit, and at another extreme the options that are like, you know I wouldn't call it a safety school, but I would call it just like the options that are like closer to what they typically do. But on the point you said, so whether it's an existing client or a new one, we tend to just try and bring the gamut of ideas early on, because in a way it sometimes I wonder if we overshare, but at the same time I feel like it's almost like helpful for us because we learn from both the stuff they like and the stuff they don't like. And so
Yeah.
we can move quickly enough to bring a range of ideas like within a couple weeks, that it's almost like you could spend that time asking a whole bunch of questions, or you can just like put it out there and just see the goods and the bads of how they're responding to everything, which I think you learn a lot more in the long run by just like showing them how you think and letting them find their way into the ones that are right for them.
Yeah, I think it's kind of dissecting like the line that your clients never know what they want. So you basically can only evaluate that by like asking the right questions and like showing them stuff that they don't like till because they don't even have like the language or the like cognition of like I don't want this. So it's almost you have to kind of yeah, I see why that can be really helpful. And it's interesting. I mean, I was going to talk about this later, but I often go back and forth between like, is a long treatment, is there ever too much as well? Like, is it overwhelming? Is it too lengthy? Or am I suggesting too many things? So I don't know if you have an opinion on that, like from the receiving end of, getting a pitch document from director, photographer. Is there like a length that kind of tires you out? Like, or not
Not
really.
for
More is
me. Um, I think one of my favorite things about treatments is, for us, it's like we might have a concept that feels like it has potential, and we might even have some idea of like if we've started to storyboard it or something like that. We like know a little bit about the mechanics of like how the sort of setup point and the punchline or whatever is going to play out. But at the same time, it's like the quicker we can get to the point that we're talking to you and letting you sort of take in your interpretation of what it is to find the real energy of it is like an exciting process. And I will say sometimes for the clients where it takes longer to move through the concepting, it's almost like we might be a little beat down over the concept.
Interesting.
And it's like really cool when a fresh perspective is coming into it, where maybe you look at it and you're able to sort of breathe life into it, where it's almost like a rediscovery of like what it was, because maybe the original concept we had has started to get a little like Frankensteiny in the way it's like been parsed through. And so you're like a new pure vision for it. Um, and I think that like there's an element to me of like we're convincing our client what needs to be done, and what's right for the brand, but like the treatment is revealing how it needs to live. And I think that's where we might have inklings of that, but like it's almost like there can be like amazing new revelations for how it's going to live, that are the difference maker. And ultimately, it's like the thing that people are going to fall in love with what they're looking is, um, how a director is like breathing life into it. So to your question about how long a treatment is the right length, my view of treatments, and I actually have changed the way we pitch based on director treatments.
Interesting.
One thing that I really like is, um, I, I like when a director sort of like contextualizes the project personally. And so sometimes I see directors will write like a note at the beginning about like a memory they've had with the brand, or some personal experience with the brand or something. And it has a way when I read a director's treatment of, I think on one hand to be able to really grasp the project, but also and grasp like what the life of this needs to be. But I think there's something really nice when you start to get to know the person who's like going to be leading the project, and like the tone can really be set in the treatment. And so I would say when you feel like you're talking to a kindred spirit, or you're reading the words of a kindred spirit who's like in on the vision with you, and who like has a personal closeness to the brand or to what is being accomplished here. Um, those are the treatments where it like kind of doesn't matter the length. It's just like I'm getting to know the person, and I'm like feeling the kindred of this person who's going to be a good collaborator.
I love that. Wow, it's you're just bringing up like so many moments that I just want to quote. Like I just like we need to repeat that. A lot of insights that you're sharing. Wow, I'm just taking that
By the
all.
way, the thing that I stole from director treatments is we now write a personalized note at the beginning of our presentations, because I realized, there's something about sincerity straight away. And
Mhm.
like, um, and so it's something that I had been seeing it enough of just like good writing from directors that like you feel sincerity, you feel earnestness. And so that's what I stole from your community is I was like, let's start like start from a human standpoint where they feel us as people, not as a company, not as like a project, you know?
Yeah, that is such great advice. Or just to remind me in the way that I go into something, because I do, I'm always searching for a good way to connect, and and sometimes in the case where it's a reach where, I don't like, I don't know why I'm just MLB, like I don't like watch baseball or something like, but finding a connection with, well, I grew up in Chicago and, that was an experience of living in Wrigleyville, or, bringing some type of joy, even if it's ancillary, even if it's like not, I used it every day, something that's just
Right.
authentic. Yeah, exactly. Drawing people into your connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super, super cool that you've started implementing that. When you're at the process where you are starting to reach out to production partners, um, how do you go about that? Like, do you put like kind of a broad reach? And do you talk to people that you've never, interacted with? And like, do you kind of take that like leap where you'd love to see like, oh, I want to know how they work? How many kind of, how broad of a reach do you sort of go? Um,
Yeah. Um, it does depend upon the project, but I'll give you just sort of like a few ways in. I will say that I tend personally to start. I like working with people that I know. So like if a project came along, I'm like, oh, we worked on great stuff with Christina. I know what she does. I there's a built-in relationship. There's a flow to it that's like easy to just like jump in together. So I tend to be like that. We have a executive producer on our team and a creative director as well. Um, our creative director oftentimes um, he knows the people he knows, but he's always tracking just like what's this production company doing? What's this director doing? And so it's a little bit more of a like what's the idea and who is like a dead ringer for the idea. And so he tends to like a lot more sort of strangers will come into the mix because it's just
yeah.
like, hey, this is what the idea is, and let's go find this person. Or he'll ask our EP to just put out feelers or, offer up options that she knows of. And so I think it is a combination of like, sometimes you're working with people sometimes you're just looking at the idea and it needs someone very specific. And other times you're just like, um, it's just nice to just see a range of options and toss it around the team and let people weigh in on who feels right. Uh, a lot of times there's also, clients might expect to look at multiple options. So maybe it's a
Yeah.
formal triple bid, or maybe it's not formal, but it's like there just kind of needs to be a triple bid to see who's right for it. And so I think there's definitely instances where we would go in knowing exactly who should be shooting, and there's some like
Oops.
formal triple bid, some where it's like let's just see who's going to be able to figure out how to make this happen. And sometimes that can be based on like creative, and sometimes it can be based on the financial side of things too, where it's like you might love a director, but you know, it comes down to how's the production company going to map out the bid and is it even achievable? So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but it's definitely like it can go a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
And in the end, it's like comfort with the person we're working with, creative, collaborative, like is the vision right? And then, the logistics of just, are they available? And, does it fit within the means of what the project is?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think having that connection already established is always like a really nice starting point. And, um, I'm always interested because, I'm in a lot of different bidding pools, and I'm always interested to find out, like, from an outsider's perspective, who am I compared to? Because I just don't know if somebody considers me comedy or humor, or somebody considers me stylized set, or like, like people kind of hook on to like certain things. And so it's always, it's interesting when I don't have the relationship and I'm the long shot, and like what, how would I approach something to kind of best, put myself forward in a way that, like, obviously I don't have the spot on my reel. I'm always saying like the spot shouldn't exist in the world because we're creating something original. But everyone, the clients want to see the spot on the reel. So I'm very used to like what's my angle and what's my strategy when I am not maybe the preferred bidder. And have you ever been in a situation where you were like pleasantly surprised, or like you had these calls that were really great, but then maybe like somebody's treatment did shift your opinion and you were like, well, maybe they're the best option that we should present? Has that kind of ever swayed you in bidding process?
Absolutely. I mean, there have been times where we've gone in thinking we're going to work with one person, and then you're surprised by a treatment, and surprised by just like the path that's being presented to you by somebody. So that absolutely happens. I think on the other hand, there's times where it, let's not forget that as an agency, we're looking at it, but then some clients are willing to go with what we recommend. Other clients um, have stronger opinions, right? And so I'll give an example of that. I won't name the client, but we have had a client where we have shown directors who have like unbelievable music videos in their reel, but are a little light on like ads for products. And, we might be shooting an ad for a product that stars a musician and that is like kind of a music video. And to an almost um, point of frustration, we would say this person's perfect for it because actually in their reel, they have a music video that feels like akin to what we're doing for this product. And we've had instances where it's like, we can't even consider this person because they haven't like worked with a product, which like you and I both know it's like transferable. It's about like good filmmaking. Um, so I think there's this element of there's instances where we're absolutely like we go in knowing somebody's great for it and they are great for it and they get the job. And then there's other instances where it's like we think this person's great and then there's like a surprise entrant who ends up compelling everyone towards that. And then there's this like third mystery window, which is like a client who's just like, sorry, music videos don't count. Like in this case, they were like, anybody can make a good music video, but can anybody make a good ad? And we're like, that's actually not true.
There's so many terrible music videos out there, but there's a lot of good ones.
Yeah.
More forgiving medium, I feel like, because it's so interpretive. But so that's no, that's really helpful to hear, and hearing that kind of journey you have to take. Like I pitch to you, and I share my thoughts on your idea, and then you're going on the next journey of the next leap of like, okay, how's that going to go? And I'm always also interested in like, are you, I just think about it so like cookie cutter, what I see in the movies. But I'm like, are they all going in a conference room and are they displaying my treatment? And is it like, do I need to be concerned that everyone has every eyeball? But the more I'm learning, I think like, you find your favorite and maybe you pitch one and you distill it down because the client doesn't want to see everything. But I never knew like who am I actually talking to? Am I talking to the creative team, or am I talking to the creative, the agency, and the client? Because it's kind of a different flow. And if I knew exactly, I could kind of really hone the language. So sometimes
Nobody knows.
nobody knows who's going to read it. So
It's reading.
yeah, purposefully broad in terms of like this could be in the hands of a client and they might read this.
At the end of the day, um, the further it gets from the creative core, um, the less deeply the person is reading it, I would say. So I would say the creative director is reading it.
Yeah.
and then the producer EP are reading it. And I think the creative director is looking at like, is the vision from this director in line with my vision, and or are they like, um there's like this balance board between like, are they embracing what it is, and are they sort of like breathing a new thing into it, which is probably its own conversation. But
Yeah.
so I think a creative director is like a best first audience who's definitely reading it, and definitely taking in the references and taking in the point of view. Um, and I think the EP or the producer is definitely reading it just with an eye towards like, does this feel like it's achievable? Um, and there's a side of this too where the director is presenting, but also the production company or the EP who's like on your side of things has a big role in it too. Where I think our EP is going to be taking in, yeah, like practically speaking, do I believe that they can do what they're saying they can do?
Yeah.
So that is a definite audience. Um, as the owner of the company, I'm definitely reading it kind of for both of those reasons, but a little more on the producing side. I'm looking for like, does this feel like, practically speaking, do I trust and do I believe that this is like achievable? Um, and I would say some clients we don't even send the treatment to if it doesn't seem like they need to. Some we do, and they might not read it,
Yeah.
and some really read it and have a lot of
Wow.
questions and want to like
Oh.
maybe even get on the phone and talk to you and like ask you questions.
Oh.
It's
Yeah, I've actually had that happen like twice, but I don't know if they actually read it. I think maybe they just wanted to talk and make sure I wasn't like crazy or something.
yeah,
Like, let's just get a feel for who this is. Well, that's yeah, so it's a range. So I wasn't crazy. Like it could be seen by many eyeballs or very few. So just that's good to know. Very good to know.
it's good to assume it's going to be seen by many. And the
Yeah.
only thing I would say is like, it's like a triple thing for me. It's like, is your personality coming through? Is the creative vision um, aligned and compelling? And does it feel practical, like it understands like the parameters of the project? And I don't even know on that third point if that all comes from the director. It feels like the EP needs, like your side production needs to be, um, you know, looking at it through that lens to make sure that it's like, it's not unachievable.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, having the, like I was saying, like the problem solving skills as well as, obviously like the creative vision and having that thought process be infused. And it's really good to kind of underscore that, I think.
Yeah.
I think we were almost segueing to this, but in terms of like scripts and when you're working through them, and, I know there's always like revisions, do you like to like how much do you like to see, because I think I don't want to just send back something that I'm repeating, your ideas back to you just with different flavor. Like I think that's kind of a miss. I think it's not fair in a way. Like what am I going to bring? But, how far do I go? And in the instance of like rewriting a script or like writing outlines, or like do you like to see a different version of the script, or how much or how little, or just leave it untouched because it's gone through rounds of revisions?
Yeah. That is a bit of a mystery. Um, because I think of it as like, um, when you're with someone in the yes and game, where
Mm,
it's like
the improv. Yep.
one person spits out an idea and then you say yes, and like what if it was like this? It's like I think that's sort of the game of it's
Yeah.
like the thing that's gotten to you from us has been through rounds.
Yeah.
um and I think there's an element of like it's not that in most cases it's not that we need like alternate scripts, although if you had one, it doesn't hurt to bring it. um I think it's just this like there's like a finesse to being able to like grab on to the core of what it is and be like, yes, I love this. And like, what if we could elevate it in this way? And like, I think part of it is like, we're not always thinking about like camera techniques and camera movements and like the actual, the way that the scenes really feel like they connect together. Like we're thinking about some of that, but I think there's an element where it can really come to life when you're like, yes, I'm going to grab onto this and like what if there's a way to create like this kind of energy to it? Um and sometimes that might push for script changes, sometimes it might um change the boards where it sort of gets reboarded almost like more as like shooting boards. But I think that's a good way to think about it. Just like how do you just push it to be better at what it's trying to be? Um, and if there's something that really isn't working, I would say like in as gentle a way as possible as possible, like, let us know if there's something that's just not working. I mean, there's times where people on our end, it's supposed to be a 30-second spot and they write like a 2-minute spot, and like that needs to be addressed, right? Like you don't want to inherit something that's like just impossible. So I think there's definitely instances too where you're gonna see things on our end that need a professional opinion
Mm.
on them that maybe we're not thinking about. So I think it's like how do you push it further, but also how do you like try and remove the things that are distractions or that are like weighing it down, because we might have things there from our end that are weighing it down, and definitely the feedback process could have added things that are like just making it confusing or like laden with a legacy that you don't want to carry forward.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's very helpful. I think, um, yeah, being the bad guy or just bringing I mean, it's the worst to say like, well, I don't want to say this is not possible, but or this is what it would take to be possible. It would take an extra day, or it would take this camera, that we can't afford. And I always try to just push that onto my EPs and my producers because I'm not in the role, I don't think, to crush ideas, but then more as I grow, I feel like maybe it is part of my responsibility, but I hate crushing things. Like, so I just like, and I'm not aware of the cost of things or the numbers. I don't know. It's really interesting because I think some EPs, I used to be much more involved. And from like the photography point of view, like we were bouncing estimates back and forth. But in terms of production companies, I think they think they're saving me from a headache, which a lot of times they are. I mean, because then if I'm focused on the money thing, I'm not totally present in the creative in a lot of ways, and I'm not really flourishing that idea. But yeah, it really is a balance because I think um, coming at it from still like I think first coming at it from full creativity, like I get off the call, I mind meld, I brain dump, and I just put everything out there and just keep those few like that's really fresh. Keep those few days to resonate with that, and then switching back into like a producer brain and reevaluating, okay, all of this is super cool. What are we going, to do? What are we actually going to pitch? Am I going to share all of this? Am I going to share like budget permitting things? So yeah, it's been an evolution, I think. And I think it's I do like to be involved in the details. I think that those little things can really shift things in, in your favor or not. So yeah, that, really, really helpful, like all of these insights. And just, yeah, I mean, I think hearing how you say, like, just being able to evaluate what is the core, like getting into the brain of you and the creative directors and the EP and just thinking, okay, the core strategy of this campaign is XYZ. And, then how can I elevate it without shifting their ideas? And I think that just comes with experience of evaluating, a concept. And I think early on, a lot of people, a lot of directors kind of just go off in like tangents. I think I was definitely guilty of that. So there, yeah, you continue to learn from every single kind of creative call, creative agency, how they work, what their
Yeah.
expectations are. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing is like, um, on the agency side, we're like really beholden to what is like, what's the message we're trying to get across?
Mm.
And like, I think there's like, there needs to be someone in the mix who's going to say, what will make people watch this? And what is like, what's the feeling of this? Like, what's gonna like make someone laugh? What's gonna make someone be just feel entertained? What's gonna make them smile? And like,
Mhm.
and I think there's also so there's a very important handoff that happens of just like we're being held accountable to, is it like communicating the message, which like you are too in the advertising realm, but at the same time it's like that message is getting approved on our watch. So you're like your ability to sort of like understand and protect that that has been like agreed to, I think is great. But I think where you come in is just like, but yeah, this needs to be like something that people want to watch. And you can be, um, I've been amazed at times that there's things we've asked for round after round and we get a no, no, no. And then a director comes in and is just like, I imagine what if we did it like this? And it might be what we've like tried to sell through. And the client like just is like, you're the filmmaker, so like it doesn't always happen that way. But
Yeah, that's weird and hilarious.
yeah, no, we've definitely had instances where like all of a sudden the people start like saying yes to the things that a director says in a way that's like it makes sense. Like there's I think people can understand that the person behind the camera um, understands how to bring things to life, and so sometimes um, we had one client where they would like ask us a million questions about how something's going to be done. And then when we had a production company in the midst and the client was sort of like interrogating the production company with the same questions, the EP said, it's just movie magic. And they accepted that. And I was like, what?
After all of that, all the many calls of interrogation,
Yeah, we're trying to like describe all the like technical reasons why it can be done. And then he was like, it's just movie magic, Like there's things we can do behind the
maybe they
camera.
just got tired of themselves asking questions and that was like their, giving up.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't know. Store that line away.
yeah,
It's an
yeah.
effective line. It's sort of like
Yeah, and I think
clears
it's
the
if
air.
it's something that you've suggested and then it comes up from an entirely different mind that like never knew that you had pitched this already, then I think it would make sense that they would question like, oh, maybe they were right, but maybe they don't say you're right. They just say it
Yeah.
was their idea, but it was just like the collective consciousness idea that like this idea needs to have this element because all of these separate people like see it that way, which is really cool when a vision can be so aligned and But also cool when I hear you're like, oh, I saw it this way. And I'm like, I totally didn't see it that way. But like, that's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Because that's more likely than, I mean, in alignment, I think we all see things very differently, which is
Yeah.
the process. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't want to take much more of your time. I mean, if there's any, parting words, I guess if there's, like emerging directors or those music video directors that need to transition into commercial work, and just kind of getting their feet wet in the bidding process, like what advice? I mean, it sounds like maybe your number one is like create a personal connection, um, and kind of speak from a human point of view. But yeah, is there any advice or do's or don'ts for directors, photographers while they're pitching to just, you know, not make a huge mistake?
I mean, I would say like um, whether you're directly in the earliest part of the process, um, we didn't really discuss this, but sometimes we find a director and it's sort of like we reach out to a director and then they like CC in a producer.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
and
Yeah.
then that's like, so the director is like instantly involved in the conversation. There's other
Yeah.
times where we might reach out to a production company or like maybe it's a rep that has a bunch of directors where we don't have contact with the director, and it might be that we're talking to an EP, and then it's like sort of like going out to directors without direct contact with us and you.
Yeah.
Um, and so I would say like whatever we're sharing either directly with you or to a production company that will be shared with you, we try and do a good job of like putting in that PDF enough that you're like, I get the idea, but I get the like lead up to the idea, and there's like enough there to like buy into it.
Yeah.
Not just a, an idea or a script, but like the why it solves what it's solving.
Right.
So we try and put enough in there. But um, I mean, one piece of advice I would give is like ask questions. Like it's
Read the
not a
brief.
terrible question to say like, is there anything that is like sort of like precious to you on the
Yeah.
agency side, and or is there anything um that's being questioned by the client that's important to you, or is there anything that you lost that you liked that
That's a
um
really good question. I love that. I'm
like
gonna.
I think that kind of that's the thing that
Yeah.
you might receive a presentation from us or like our treatment, and like you don't necessarily get the luxury of knowing how it got to that place, but there was a journey it took. And so I think like um I guess my piece of advice would be like don't be afraid to like tap a little bit on like what was the like seed,
Mm.
and like are there things that were lost along the way, and or things that people have really fallen in love with along the way, and like that could actually give you something that's really useful at the heart of it to know like where to lean.
Mhm.
So I think that's one piece of advice of and if you can ask for a call directly with the agency, if it
Yeah.
is production company, I, I can't imagine any agency is going to say no to getting on the phone with the director. So I think like
Yeah.
the more you can like establish direct person to person contact, so that you can like hear them talk about it or ask questions and kind of get inside of it. I just think it's going to be an edge for you to just feel comfortable that you're sort of grabbing the right intuition.
Mhm.
And then, so that's like on the just like human to human. And then I think like what I said before about just like extending that like personal touch into the treatment itself. And like, I think it's about that linkage of like real connection, um, person to person, and understanding that on paper in the treatment.
Mhm.
The other thing I would say is I have had young directors tell me um, that it's about being like the fresh new take that's like really like hip to whatever is like the thing of the time or whatever. And
Yeah.
I at one point I said to a young director, I said, actually, I see directing as leadership
Mhm.
because if you've been on a shoot, um, there's a lot of people on the set. Um, and I'm constantly amazed by like the chain of communication that happens, almost like invisibly when something gets said by a director and the way like everybody sort of like starts moving as an organism. And
Right,
I
right.
think there's like a true element of like, I don't, I don't think enough people give credit to the fact that like on top of like, is this a good collaborator with me, and is this a good creative visionary, and are they thinking like both with vision and practical considerations? I don't think enough credit is given of just like leadership of somebody who just is like making decisions,
Yeah,
who's
yeah.
understanding the variables, who's understanding how time is moving on set, who's understanding the process, who can like make good decisions, which in my mind is leadership, and ultimately is going to impact the movement of, 50 or more people on a set, like moving efficiently or not. So that would be the last thing I say is just like, you know, how do directors um, get credit for that? Get credit for just like the importance of leadership and decision making. So,
Mhm. Yeah, oh my gosh. Wow. Like that is just so much good advice. And I haven't really thought about that piece. Like I used to kind of do some writing and then I was like focusing on reading a ton of leadership books just because we're sort of like breaking this hierarchical film system that kind of was born from like military, like first AD, second AD. Obviously you need a point of command. But kind of like shaking that up a little bit in a way that's kind of these like different tones on set that I always hear about, like, oh, another in the previous times when the directors were like just yelling at everybody all the time to get things done, and I just don't imagine how that could be productive, like how you could motivate somebody. And my leadership style that I've been like exploring and always kind of developing and learning, because you're in it, you're in the moment where you have to make a decision, you're under pressure, there's no time, there's budget, money's flying out the door. So you're right, like you have to consider all of these elements at the same time and make the best decision possible for the agency, for the creative, without sacrificing. And yeah, it's definitely a lot of pressure, and then not show that you're melting down on the inside. I'm kidding. That's right. I got to put my poker face on a lot of times. I'm like, I'm freaking out inside, but we're
yeah,
going to get through this and I got to stay calm.
yeah, yeah. I will actually add to that, like sometimes because of all the stresses on set, like there can be like an anxiety virus that can spread on set
Mm.
when people feel like a shot's taking too long, and it does feel like money is like
Yeah.
burning with every
Yeah.
passing, hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I think when directors can read the room and can come
Mhm.
over and just like explain where we are in the process directly to the
Mhm.
agency or to the client, that too is really helpful. I mean, you're going to be at
Yeah.
the closer to the camera, so maybe
Yeah.
it's the EP who has to tap you on the shoulder and say, "Hey, temperature's rising. Can you come over and just like explain what's happening?" But
Yeah.
that actually, it's almost like there's what's happening and there's the perception of what's happening.
Right.
And
Wow.
that can be very different. And things can go off track very fast. And it doesn't take
Yeah.
very long of like people having the wrong perception of what's happening, and like
Hmm.
the anxiety level rapidly rises. And so that's part of this like magical formula of like leadership, where it's like you're thinking about vision, ideas, um, aesthetic of how that comes to life, protecting the story, like practical things about budget and how and pacing of how the day is moving. But um, there's no kind of lurking in the center of it is just like being able to like have the emotional IQ to tell when people are feeling nervous and to sort of like connect on a human level and like alleviate that concern, that like either yes, this is concerning and we're addressing it, or no, you don't have to be concerned because it's like here's where we are in the process. So maybe the moral of the story, as I keep coming back to, there's a human factor of just like the way you first meet the team, to the way you come through in the treatment, to the way you manage on set and in the actual creative process. It's just like this feeling of, you know, feeling sort of known and heard by the director, while also being sort of like leveled up by the director at the same time.
Mm.
No pressure. A lot. It's a big job.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I just really quick, I just thinking about the perception of what's happening and then what's actually happening, because I am trying to, like tell myself that I walk up to wherever Video Village is, and I just realize that you guys are staring at a screen and you have no idea, the 25, 50 people that are like, "Zzz," and it sometimes does feel like we're staring at a shot and like what is happening. And going back up there to say, oh, like people are working as fast as they can, and I just forget to sometimes realize that you're literally staring at the same thing, and you don't see anything changing, and it could probably drive a lot of people insane. So that's just something I need to like always be conscious of, to kind of alleviate that, because I'm kind of, yeah, I'm in the middle. I see the craziness, and then you see like nothing progressing. It's a very vast like difference, but
Yeah.
yeah, anyway, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that might be on the producer to be managing the perception, but at
Hmm.
some point, the lever for a producer to manage the perception is to tap on the director and bring the director over, because at the end of the
Hmm.
day, um, I can't tell you how many times we're sitting on set and we're looking at storyboards and we're thinking we're shooting shot 13, and then we hear
Interesting.
news that we've not only already shot 13, but we did 14, 15, 16, and 17, and now we're on 18, and it just like
Oh,
erupts because
wow.
it's people are
Interesting.
like they don't they don't always know what's happening. And
Yeah, yeah.
it's
Deciphering a board too, because sometimes the boards aren't exactly what, so like we are on this board, it's flipped the other way, there's a male instead of a female. Yeah, that's actually, these are all like even just beyond the treatment, like how to act on set. Like this is like such a valuable um episode for all directors, really. Yeah.
I've taken it off topic. I know we're supposed to be about the treatment, but I
No, no, no. I'm really excited. I mean, I know we've gone like way over of what I typically do. So I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule, and, just really just so like congrats on all of the awards. And as you've been growing, I think you guys are doing such great work. And just as people, you are super cool people to work with as well. And I love the stuff we made for Amazon Fresh, and I think you guys were really pushing things there, and I think it turned out so fun and beautiful, and so yeah, I just want to say thank you and really love chatting with you, and yeah, we will post this and share and then get all the feedback and then have a ton of people reach out. I'm kidding.
awesome. I hope so. Yeah. Love working with you. We got to do it again sometime, and I'm really proud of what we've been able to do, but I always love connecting. So
They'll
Sorry
find
if I
you.
took it too long.
Pen buyers at yeah, confidants. We are confidant.co at
It's just
Instagram.
confidant.co.
Okay. Okay.
.co.
For the
Yeah.
Instagram, is that the same thing?
Instagram is at We Are Confidant.
Yeah, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So check out the work they're doing, and thank you so much, Ken, for joining and bringing
Yeah,
all.
glad to be here.
Yeah, amazing. All right.
Awesome.